Let's be real. Every single day, your phone is buzzing, your feeds are just an endless scroll of opinions, and it feels like everyone is shouting all at once. So in all that chaos, how do you actually find what's true, what really matters? Well, today, we're going to try and do just that. We're going to cut through the noise and find the signal.
This quote from our source material just says it all, doesn't it? It's a daily battle for the pros, which means for the rest of us, it can feel downright impossible. We are just buried in hot takes, opinions, and, let's face it, a ton of clickbait.
So that brings us to the big question. When literally every single post and notification is fighting for your attention, where do you even begin to look for information you can actually trust? It's probably one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves today.
And believe it or not, the answer might come from a place you wouldn't expect. Not some official media watchdog, but from what's basically the world's biggest, most brutally honest focus group, Reddit. I mean, think about it. It's this huge community of people who are naturally skeptical, super tech-savvy, and they spend their time picking apart and filtering the best and worst sources on the planet.
Okay, so first up, let's dive into the global news sources that have somehow earned the trust of this massive online community. Think of this as Reddit's anti-bias starter pack for getting a handle on what's happening in the world.
All right, so for the big political stories, the stuff that shapes our world, where does Reddit turn? Well, it's not the cable news channels you might think. Over and over again, users point to the originals, the wire services. We're talking about the Associated Press and Reuters.
And the reason why is so important, Redditors, they crave the raw ingredients. AP and Reuters are like the wholesalers of news. They just report the facts. What happened, who said what. That's it. It's the stuff other news outlets buy and then add their own spin to. So by going to the source, you skip the spin. Now, when they do want some analysis, the top pick is almost always The Economist, because it offers that deep, global viewpoint.
Now, what about money, business, and finance? The same logic applies here. The community puts its trust in two absolute heavyweights, the Financial Times and Bloomberg. So why these two? Well, the reasoning is pretty simple and really powerful. It's what the pros use. These are the same sources that people on Wall Street are reading every single day. The quality is so high, in fact, that most of it's behind a pretty expensive paywall. And here's a cool little community quirk. You'll often see users sharing special gift links so their friends can read an article. That's how you know it's valued. And of course, for talking about how to use that info, they all gather in places like the r/personal finance subreddit.
Okay, we have to talk about tech and science. I mean, that's kind of Reddit's home turf, right? And here, the top recommendations are Ars Technica and The Verge. These are publications that really speak the language of people who are deeply curious about how things work.
The key word here is depth. This community does not want the science dumbed down. They love Ars Technica because when a new computer chip comes out, they don't just get the price tag. They get a deep dive into the chip's architecture. They want to understand the how and the why. And for that bigger picture, how all this new tech is actually changing our lives and our culture, the go-to magazine pick is Wired.
All right, let's pivot now and look at a really interesting case study, India. The Indian Reddit community is famous for being incredibly sharp and very, very critical of clickbait and media noise. So their list of trusted sources is especially telling.
So for political news in India, two classic newspapers are consistently held up as the gold standard in the Reddit community: the Indian Express and the Hindu. In a media landscape that can be incredibly loud, these are seen as the reliable, steady voices.
But here's the real insider tip. This is the little secret that gets passed around all the time on the platform. It's not just about reading the newspaper. It's about a very specific feature that Redditors absolutely swear by, the explained section of the Indian Express. They see it as an essential tool.
And here is exactly why that one section is so beloved. It'll take something super complicated, like a new government policy or a complex law, and it breaks it all down into a simple question and answer format. It just cuts right through the jargon. Of course, the community also highlights other amazing sources, like the News Minute, which has a great focus on South India, and News Laundry, which gets a ton of respect because it has no ads and is funded entirely by its readers.
When it comes to business news in India, the community preference is crystal clear. They want clean, straightforward, data-driven reporting, and the two outlets that deliver that consistently are Mint and Business Standard.
And again, the reasons are super specific. Mint gets a lot of love for its clean, beautiful infographics that make complex financial data easy to grasp. Business Standard, on the other hand, is the go-to for its pure, no-frills, data-heavy articles.
And for anyone following India's booming startup scene, Redditors will tell you to check out subscription services like The Ken and The Morning Context for those really deep investigative pieces.
So, we've covered the daily news cycle, but what about when you want to go deeper? This last part is for those of us who want to get past the headlines and really sink our teeth into long-form stories and serious research.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the India recommendations. For politics, that explain section in the Indian Express is the secret weapon. For business, it's all about that clean data from Mint and Business Standard. And for startups, you need the deep dives from the Ken and the Morning Context. It's a fantastic toolkit. But what if you want to go even one level deeper?
Okay, this is where we get into the really heavy-duty stuff. In India, if you want those incredible 10,000-word investigative stories, The Caravan is considered the absolute gold standard. For pure academic rigor, there's the Economic and Political Weekly. And if you want to get right to the source code of human behavior, Redditors point you to the Journal of Applied Psychology. But hey, if you don't have time for dense academic papers, the Oxford Review is described as your own personal intelligence service, summarizing all that research for you. Pretty cool, right?
So as we start to pull all of this together, there's one big idea that just keeps coming up. The wisdom from Reddit seems to be this: being well-informed isn't just about knowing the names of a few good publications. It's about consciously choosing your sources for very specific reasons. Maybe it's for raw data, or for deep analysis, or just for a feature that makes things clear. It's all about understanding why you trust the things you read.
So there you have it. We've just walked through a toolkit that's been curated and stress-tested by millions of the most skeptical readers on the internet. It's a roadmap for finding that signal and all of the noise. And so the last question? Well, it's for you. Now that you have these tools and these insights, how are you going to build, or maybe rebuild, your own information diet?